Yo guys, Tom here, back with another sledge video. This one will be kind of short and sweet. I had a couple guys ask me questions on what fan I'm running on the motor on this. So I'll show you guys real quick what I'm running and show you how it works. And I'll link up any info on this down below. Okay, so this fan, I just pulled it back off here so I can show you in detail what I had to do to mount this thing up. Because of course, like everything else in RC, it's not exactly straightforward. So this is a Rocket brand fan off of Amazon. I think the actual brand was Dilwe, D-I-L-W-E, but I've seen this actually listed under a bunch of different brand names. So this is a 35 by 10 mil fan, and fans, just so you guys know, fans are measured from edge to edge here, right? It's not the mounting hole spacing. So the mounting hole spacing on these is about 30 millimeters across. Don't make the mistake of ordering a 30 mil fan because these holes are not going to be in the right spot. That would be more of like a 25 mil mounting hole. So you need a 35 mil fan. And the 10 is really just the thickness of the fan body here. So yeah, 35 mil fan, these are going to be 30 millimeters between the mounting holes, which is exactly what you need. And what I mentioned about it not being straightforward is this. I'll show you guys here. You see this ridge here on the edge of the motor cradle, how that's raised up. And this is the flat surface where the fan body is going to sit. But these ridges cause a problem. And the reason being is the fan, in this particular fan, you can see these outer corners are actually kind of bumped out a little bit and wider than the rest of the fan. So what happens, I'm going to turn this sideways here so you can see the problem I first ran into. Well, actually, I have to flip it over. It doesn't sit all the way down. You see that gap there? You can't really sit it. It'll kind of fit in there, but it rocks around a little bit. Now what you could do is just put the screws in and carefully tighten them down so that it sits nice and level, and you can leave it like that and it's not going to really cause any issue. The problem you're going to have though is it does come with screws. It comes with 4 mounting screws. These are, I think, M2 by 14 millimeter. The problem is that little gap under there, because this doesn't sit flush, these screws are not going to really be long enough. They would barely catch any of the threads. So you would definitely need to go to a longer screw like I did here anyway. I didn't really need to go longer, but I did anyway. But I'll show you guys what I did real quick. I actually used a Dremel with a cutoff wheel, but you could use any type of grinding tip or even a sanding drum. If you don't have any type of Dremel tool, you could even take a file and file off this entire like lower kind of ridge here, just to make it sit flush with the center part of the fan. And once you do that, then it sits, sits down onto that motor cradle nice and flat. And you could even use some type of spacer if you wanted, a couple little washers, or what I would do, if you have any type of aluminum spacer, this would be a little too long, but if you had a shorter aluminum spacer, I would go with something like that. But the main reason I did this, aside from it just kind of fitting right, and I kind of wanted it to sit nice and flush and be supported by that entire lower cradle there. Another reason why I did that was I figured for heat transfer, right? So this whole thing is going to act like a heat sink. So it's going to draw heat away from the motor up through the cradle, and then from the cradle up into the housing of the fan. I mean, I'm probably nitpicking here. I don't think it's really going to draw that much heat up and away, but every little bit helps if you are at the point where you want to run a fan anyway. You want it to run as cool as possible, so why not just mount this the proper way and get the maximum amount of cooling as possible. So that's what I would do, guys. Pretty straightforward. And then I went ahead and used some M2. I think these are 16 mil long stainless ones that I had lying around, and throw some Loctite on these because it is going into aluminum. And you're also getting a thermal expansion and contraction deal going on here with the motor cradle. So pretty good chance that these screws could back out if you don't use some type of thread lock on them. And as far as wiring goes, it's pretty straightforward. So I ran like this nice wire loom here, so I can't show you exactly what I did here, but I'll show you kind of outside of the loom. So The fan comes with a JST connector, which looks just like this. It's black, but it's pretty much the same exact connector. And of course, it's not long enough to reach from the fan all the way back to the receiver where I plugged it in, so I had to make an extension. You have a couple different options to do that. You could either, if you have some wire laying around, doesn't really need to be super thick. You can see, I don't know exactly what gauge this is, but it's fairly thin wire. It's not very high voltage. This is just going to run off receiver voltage, which is 6 volts. So you could just cut the connector, like cut it, leave enough wire on both sides. You can then solder in an extension wire between the connector and the fan, and you can just extend that and use the original connector, plug it into your receiver. What I did is I have these JST extensions. I took a male and a female and I soldered them together, and I made a little extended loop. So I plugged the fan into the female part, and then I took the male part here, which is exactly what's on the end of the fan, and I plugged it into the receiver. And I'll show you, I think I took a picture of it, I'll show you in the actual truck, but I have a Traxxas receiver here, and I'll show you real quick. I don't know how many guys know this, but you can plug a JST connector directly into a receiver. Typically you'd have your servo wire going in here, which has a negative, which is the black, positive is red, white is the signal wire. On the fan, you don't need a signal wire, so you're just going to have your negative and positive. So if you look on here and you see that the negative is the outermost pin, and if you take your JST, you can simply plug that right into an open channel, and there you go. Now you have power, and you could actually run LED lights like this, as long as they're able to be powered off of 6 volts, or you can do a fan like this. Super simple. The one thing I will say though, because the JST connector is a little bit thicker, it has like this added kind of ridge there. If you have an open channel between 2 servo leads, it's probably not really going to fit down in there. It's a little too thick to go between. So you would either need to put it on the top open channel like that, because it's flat on the top edge, or you would need, like, 3 channels open, or put it in between 2 other ones. So you just need like the space to fit it in there. If you don't have the space on this truck, you definitely do. Stock, you have plenty of open channels in there to plug this into. I think I plugged mine into channel 4, but pretty much any of these servo channels are going to provide 6 volts, and that's enough to power this fan. So super easy. Now, even if you made the mistake and plugged this onto the wrong pins, you're not going to hurt anything. The fan's just not. If you have it plugged into, say, the positive and the signal, it's just not going to work. If you have it plugged in reverse, it's still going to work. If it's on the 2 right pins, it'll still work, but your fan's going to blow in reverse. So you want to just make sure that the fan is blowing air down toward the motor and not up and away. Super easy. That's that. I will say that this is really not a mandatory thing. Maybe if you're running in hotter climates, summer's coming up here in the US, so it's going to become more of a factor. If you do change the gearing and go to a taller gearing, you're going to be adding some heat into the system. I just kind of went ahead and did this as a preventative right off the bat. So you might not need it, but if you wanted to install one, this is a good option. It does work really well. It's a pretty good fan for the money. Like I said, 25 bucks. Works well. Let me plug this thing in and I'll show you guys this thing working here. All right, there you go. So nice fan overall, moves quite a bit of air, not super noisy. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. There you have it. Hopefully it's helpful. And I think I'm actually going to do another video later that I'm going to try to kind of compile all the information I've found so far on the Sledge from my own experience so far, which isn't a lot, but I've had a couple issues, even more issues that I've seen happen since my last running with this. I did stop at the track at the end on my way home from that sandpit video. I stopped at the track and ran this on 4S, and I did actually have probably my biggest issue overall. I really think it's like a one-off kind of thing, like a manufacturing defect. I don't think it's going to be common, but I'll share that with you guys anyway. I'll put up a video later. I'm going to kind of, like I said, compile everything that I found between watching other videos and all the great information I found off of the Facebook group for the Sledge. And I'll try to do like a pretty concise video, not really going into detail on any of the fixes and stuff, but just showing you guys. So if you just picked up a sledge and you want to know like, hey, what do I have to do right away to make sure that this thing is in, you know, ready to go condition so I could go out and enjoy it and not have any issues. I'll try to go over all the basics so far, and maybe as things kind of change over time, I'll drop a new video every so often just to include any updates. So look for that later, guys. And thanks for watching. Subscribe if you like the channel, if you find this helpful. Any questions, comments, or whatever, just drop them down below and I'll try to get back to you guys. And yeah, thanks for watching. See you guys later.